Okay, so I believe that we're all set. Okay, guys. So I'm very glad to welcome our first guest on our podcast. That is Dr. Aaron Horschig. It's a pleasure for us to have him on our podcast. And today we'll be discussing some great topics with him, and hopefully that information will be helpful for you guys. So let me first give you some insights on who is Dr. Aaron. He's a founder of Squat University, and he's a physical therapist, coach, speaker, and writer. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist to the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and has worked with, I believe, already thousands of athletes, like strength athletes and international soccer players, NFL athletes, national level Olympic weightlifters, and basically has been helping people around the world to squat at their best. And he's been tutoring and information through his book, the Squat Bible, truly a Bible for all of listeners. He's also a competitive Olympic weightlifter since 2005. So he's done a lot for the weightlifting community and helping people around the world, like on a daily basis. Dr. Aaron, please add anything you'd like in addition.
First off, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me the honor of being the first guest on your podcast. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll be able to bring some fire for your audience. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up. I mean, I'm a physical therapist by background, but I also have been in the strength and conditioning game for a long time. I first, walked into the weight room. I think I was in 8th grade. So, what is that, 13, 14 years old, and just instantly fell in love with it. And I've always been one of those guys that just loves being in the weight room and training hard. And eventually found Olympic weightlifting in 2005 and started competing in that, and things just took over from there. And after sort of getting done with college and getting my doctorate, I started working with athletes of all ages and all athletic backgrounds. No matter if you were an 8-year-old soccer player, a 25-year-old CrossFitter, a professional football player, or, grandma who still loves to run marathons or something like that. I love working with all ages, but particularly across the board, I continue to see this flaw in that so often in our pursuit of excellence in any performance that we're trying to chase, we so often overlook the importance of just proper movement patterns, especially in the squat. So really that led me to try to start teaching the world in ways in which I had learned from those who have come before me in just my own way of speaking, and really try to take the very difficult and very scientific based methods and teachings from those who have come before me, but really simplify it in a way that really everyone can understand, so we can get better at moving, improve technique, decrease aches and pains, and really reach our true athletic potential, no matter where you're at in life.
That's great. Yeah, it's really awesome. I love it. Okay, so let's start with the things we have prepared for our followers. First thing we wanted to check and to provide us more insight is how to structure a productive warm up, and usually before a strength training session. How long should it take, as per your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is a big question a lot of people have. They get to the gym and they don't know what to do. What do I do to warm up? They've heard a warm up is good, but they don't really know what movements that entails. They often just see their friends go to the gym and just put weight on the bar and start lifting, and really they don't know where to go. Well, here's a very simple way to think about it. If you were to go to a nice fancy restaurant, usually the menu has a couple different things on it. You have appetizers, you have entrees, you have dessert, right? Well, you don't go to a fancy restaurant and order everything off the menu. Obviously, you pick one of each. So whenever you're going into your warm up, it's very simple. Pick a few things in different categories that fit to help you work on your individual weak links. That's going to help you perform better. So different categories can be some soft tissue work, mobility work, and then stability work. So think about soft tissue work. I often like a little bit of foam rolling. For me, for the way in which I'm moving throughout the day, usually my quads and adductors are just a little stiff getting into the workout. So I do a minute or so foam rolling of those areas. I feel a little bit better afterwards. Mobility work. For a lot of people, especially if you're trying to do some deep squatting, ankles are huge for most people. I see a lot of people that come into the gym that need a little bit of ankle mobility work in order for them to get into even better positions whenever they're trying to lift big weights. So a deep goblet squat stretch can be very helpful. There's many different ankle mobility exercises that I share over Squat University, but the goblet squat is one that I think almost anyone can benefit from, because not only is it going to hit the ankles, but it's also going to hit the hips as well. For some people, if they have sort of that pinch or block sensation in the front side of their ankle, which a lot of people do, like a banded joint mobilization can be very helpful as well. So it really all depends on what your body needs. If you don't have a pinch sensation or a block sensation in the front side of your ankle, you don't need to do banded joint mobilizations. So it's all about finding what is going to help your body move better, feel better after, because then you're going to be able to lift bigger weights with better technique. And then sort of that last one is stability. So often, especially for in the weight room, I'm a huge fan of using different exercises like banded squats or side plank clamshells, things like that. You can get a hip circle band around your knees and do some slow banded squats, some side plank clamshells, different things like that. But the goal is to promote stability and strength. We're trying to prime the muscles that surround certain joints to kick on so that they can help promote proper technique and coordination whenever we get into the barbell. But if you get to the gym and you do a few things that are specific to what your body needs to help you move better right after, maybe 10, 15 minutes at the max, you're going to be moving much better, feeling much stronger, and you're going to have a much better workout. And as a side effect of that, you'll have less chance and less risk of injury. So when you go into a warm-up, don't think, I'm here to decrease my injury risk. Think the things I'm going to do are going to help me perform better. And with that mindset, it's really going to help you pick, the things that are going to be beneficial in the end. You're not just going to rush through it and just do it to do it so that you can get your workout. You're actually going to take time to really hone in on the very specifics of what you're trying to do so that in the end, you can perform better, which is the reason why we're trying to get in the weight room in the first place.
That's great. If you want to have a good workout, you have to have good warm-up. That's great.
Exactly. Yeah, that's key. And if anyone listening to this wants different ideas, there's a lot of stuff on Squat University on YouTube that I put out, different ways in which you can warm up. I just put a video up today called the Ultimate Deadlift Warm-Up Routine, which is,
by the way, great video.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just watched
but
it.
I've got ones for squat as well. I'm probably going to make some eventually in the future for cleans, for snatches and different things like that.
Great. So we get the warm-up done, like in discussed, and given that said, we often include different type of stretches, or at least people do. So what would be the difference, and to differentiate that between the active and static stretching? What will be the pros and cons, and when you would advocate doing one or the other?
Yeah. So let's say you have someone who has very, very stiff ankles, and the stiffness is because of the muscles on the backside, the muscles and fascia are just really, really stiff. So whenever they try to do an ankle stretch, it's just very tight in the back. Well, a static stretch means that you're going to drive your knee over your toe and you're going to hold that stretch for a certain length of time. Now, research has shown that if you hold a static stretch for upwards of 1 minute to 2 minutes, it's actually going to decrease the amount of force that muscle can produce thereafter. So let's say you're getting to a workout where your goal is to PR that day. You're trying to really lift as much weight as possible. You're not really going to want to do very long static stretches just because it's not going to allow you to produce as much force in those muscles directly after. However, you can also do short duration static stretches, upwards of like 10 seconds for a couple reps, and that will allow you to improve your mobility without that decrease in performance thereafter. So really you have to understand sort of what's the goal. Let's say you just have very, very poor mobility and you need some of those longer duration stretches in order to get into better positions. That's okay for some people. Understanding that the mindset of that day's workout is to get into even better positions and not necessarily to produce as much force as possible. So it all sort of stems back to why are we doing this exercise in the first place? And if someone needs more mobility, there's not necessarily a black and white, never stretch long durations, but you have to sort of understand the underlying mechanism for whether or not this is going to be helpful for positioning or helpful for performance.
Great, really. And Do you advocate, for instance, individual needs and has poor mobility and needs more long duration static stages? Should they do them before or after a workout?
Definitely before their workout. And the reason is
Before.
because our goal is to really promote proper technique and positioning in the training. So we want to really maximize that potential by doing our mobility work first. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing any stretching after, but again, our goal is to always move well first. So if you have poor mobility that's limiting your technique while training, you really need to focus on that mobility in the warm up.
Okay, yeah. As you're saying, the squat is first a movement before it was an exercise, so we need to first move properly, then start adding weight on the bar.
Exactly, exactly.
So as I said, a squat, and as per your experience and the people you've worked, what would be the common problems with squats, and how you approach like fixing those, and what would point out to be like the most common things you see?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the most common things is just being off balance during the squat. And too often, we are in horrible shoes when we're squatting. I see way too many people that just are trying to squat in their basic running shoes. And
True.
there's a Nike Air Max. While it may look like a cool shoe, it's a crappy shoe to squat in. You're going to have a big air bubble in the back. That's not a good shoe to squat in. It's basically like squatting on a marshmallow. Now,
True.
whenever you squat, one thing you can do is if you're listening to this, is get with one of your friends, have them film your squat with their phone from a side view, a complete side view, and see how is the barbell tracking. Now, ideally, that barbell should be tracking over the middle of your foot when viewed from the side. And a lot of times I will see that barbell in people who are off balance, that barbell is going to start tracking towards their toes, which means that they're off balance. And when you're off balance, your body's not capable of producing as much efficiency in movement, force, and power production. So a couple things that can create that off balance squat. You could have poor mobility. Ankles, like I said, are one of the biggest things that people just have a lot of stiffness there. So improving ankle mobility in some people could be very helpful at allowing them a more balanced bar path. Foot stability, we talked about shoes. Get out of the Nike Air Maxes. Even squatting barefoot sometimes is the best way to go. But squatting in a good firm shoe where you can really grip the ground and feel if you're shifting forward or back or side to side can be a huge game changer just from the start. And then also making sure that you're not taking too big of a hip hinge. Every squat starts with the hips, but the amount of hip hinge is going to vary based on your anatomy, your lever lengths. If you have a really long torso and short femurs, it's all going to be dependent on your body. But you can tell if you're using the squat that's right for your body, if from the side view, that barbell is tracking over the middle of the foot on the way down and on the way up.
Great. I just recently made a video about squat shoes and generally what should be training in. And I often see people squatting with running shoes, like you said, Nike Air Maxes, and their feet are just wobbling to the side and they're not stable.
Yeah.
And I was just like advising that you don't need to like invest in Nike Roma Leaves and spend all that money, but you can get like a basic Converse and squat in them because they have a stable firm sole which will not allow your foot to wobble for the sides.
Yeah. I mean, a good shoe is totally worth the money. And I mean, you said the Nike Romellos, like obviously those are a little bit more expensive weightlifting shoes, but there's a number of shoes on the market nowadays that are under like $100 US. Do Win, I think, is a company based out of China. They make a shoe that's
Yeah.
under $100. So there's a number of different websites that people can go on and order shoes on a discount as well, and they are very, very much worth the money. But understanding too that you should be squatting often barefoot. Bodyweight squatting often throughout the day, or just being able to sit in a deep squat or perform your first set of warm-up squats without shoes on as well. And it's going to really show you whether or not your body's balanced or whether or not you have an issue that you need to focus on.
Yeah, when you said balance, I recently came across a test where they ask individual to go on a deep squat position barefoot, and they just try to push them and see how stable they are in the bottom of the squat. And
Yep.
they're saying it's not just going down, but when you're in the bottom position of the squat, when someone trying to push you, it's important for you to be able to keep that position and to breathe normally without being like very easy to fall. Like if someone touches you and you're just like off balance immediately.
Exactly. And that's the big thing is we have to understand that we need to almost get positions before movements, positions before patterns. So if you can't solidify your bottom squat position, you don't own that position, almost as if you are a statue down there. You are not moving at all. You have complete control of your body. If you don't have that first, the squat itself, you have not earned the right to perform the squat movement. You have to solidify the bottom of the squat position first, and then on top of that, then you can improve patterning.
Okay, I love it. And we discussed that already, but in terms of stability and mobility, I see a lot of people and having the right mobility, especially like beginners. They go into the gym, they haven't been training, and they don't have any stiffness. If of course they're not working in an office or something, seated all day, but usually they're lacking more stability. Do you see that trend also, or they're very individual?
So the big thing is that it's always going to be very individual. You can have some people that sit down all day and, man, they're very mobile. They're just born that way. There's people that fall into sort of either camp, people that are hypermobile, people that are hypomobile. We have people that sort of fall into either position. So it's all about individualizing your assessment and understanding, am I someone that's naturally double jointed? Some people say, or am I naturally someone that just feels stiff? And then on top of that, we have strength and stability. Strength is different than stability because strength is your ability to produce force and power, whereas stability is your ability to limit excessive or unwanted motion. So someone could be very strong, but yet have really bad stability. So it all has to come down to the assessment. So that's why a lot of the stuff that I share across social media, on YouTube, on Instagram, it's all based on, do you have this problem? Try this test and understand if this exposes an underlying problem, because we can't just assume someone has an issue. We have to assess that issue, because you could have a lot of people that have a problem in getting into a good-looking bottom squat, and it could be for many different reasons. They could have crappy foot stability. They could have poor ankle mobility. They could have a poor hip hinge and poor balance and poor core stability. So there's a number of different whys behind movement problems. So that's where the assessments come in, and why those are so key.
Okay, right. And we basically went through a lot of things, but there is something very common we see, and people are asking us, especially when they start training, and that is like popping joints, not only knees but also ankles and wrists. So we've seen the different evidence and people saying that it's not something you should be concerned if there is no pain, but we really wanted to hear your opinion about it and what you think.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the joint and really what's going on. Some joints just sort of pop a little bit. There's a lot. Sometimes there's different ideas if there's more like almost like a gas bubble being released from inside the joints, the synovial fluid. Whether or not maybe that popping is more of a grinding of joint tissues and different structures rubbing up against each other. So there's not necessarily a definitive answer, because we don't. What is the popping that you're feeling? I will say this. A lot of times when people say their knees are popping, a lot of times that's because they have an insufficient warm up and they have mobility restrictions around the knee. So I often find people who have like popping around their knee, if they do a good warm up and they foam roll their quads and they get their glutes activated and they do a couple squats, all of a sudden it goes away. We get some people that just have some popping in some areas, and that's just the way their joints have always worked. So I don't necessarily think you can say for 100% certainty yes or no it's a good or bad thing, because I think there's a couple of different things that could create an issue there. And even then, is it a big issue long term? It's hard to say. I think if the popping you're feeling is actually structures rubbing against each other, then it's probably a precursor to eventually developing some arthritis there. So it's something to think about, addressing and making sure, why is this there in the first place, and can you modify it at all?
Oh, great. Well, that was very very productive and great, touching base on all those questions. We wanted to ask you, just add anything else you want to summarize on general advices to our followers, because really you have all the knowledge and expertise which you can help us improve our technique in various movements. So please share anything else you want on top of what we already discussed.
I think the big thing I want people to take away is that the quality of your movement is of the utmost importance. It does not matter if you hit a brand new PR that is 20 kilos more than your last one if it looks like crap. Now, yes, when you get on the competition platform, if you are a competitive powerlifter or weightlifter, obviously all things go. But in training, the way in which you train will bleed over into the way in which you compete. And in training, if you are just going to the gym to get stronger, to get more fit, to enjoy life more, the quality and the way in which you move is of the utmost importance, because the more you lift with bad technique, the quicker you will get injured. And you're not having any progress in meeting your goals if you're injured. So the way in which you train means everything. So quality above all.
Yeah, and to keep the ego lifting away. It's something very important, guys.
Exactly.
Okay, so I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time and for basically answer all of our questions. I hope that our followers will find that helpful, and if they want to check your content, they can do it on squatuniversity.com. They can purchase the book from there, I believe. Also, it's available in Amazon, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, it's available on Amazon all over the world. In almost every country, there should be a version of the Squat Bible. And it's also coming out in a number of different languages as well. I think I've got 7 foreign translations as of right now.
We should get one in Bulgarian.
That would be awesome. If anyone listening to this is from a Bulgarian publishing house, hit me up.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have it translated in Bulgarian. Also, to remind our followers that they can check your content also on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. You publish daily different advices, tips, and videos with warm-ups and technique fixes. So it's pretty awesome to have you here and to share your knowledge with us. It's really appreciated. And having you as our first guest in that discussion was amazing. So again, I want to thank you from myself and my fiance and basically everyone listening to that podcast.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure for us.
Yeah, man.